Joining us now is Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. He serves on the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. Senator, always a pleasure. Thank you for taking the opportunity. So let's talk about this. You saw me going at it with Kellyanne, and this is a proposition that needs to be tested. Either you believe that the dignity of the survivors and those who did not survive warrants a look at this problem that recurs, or you see it as insensitive because that's politicizing a tragedy. Where are you?
I don't think it's politicizing it at all. If this was a dam break that had drowned 59 people and there was a faulty valve, we'd be talking about how do we fix that valve. This is a case where a particular piece of equipment enabled this tragedy to occur. The bump stock allowed this guy to shoot 600-700 rounds a minute rather than 60 and have to stop and reload. So it was a integral part of this tragedy, and it was legalized 7 years ago, shouldn't have been. And I think it's something, believe it or not, we've got Republicans and Democrats both talking about the danger of this thing. Machine guns are illegal. They have been for many years. This effectively converts a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun, and it shouldn't be allowed.
86, the law then took away manufacture of machine guns for the public. You can still buy older ones, pre-86, they're just really expensive. But I have to tell you, what are we seeing online right now? People running out to buy bump stocks, and it's not because they just heard about them. It's not because they're a novelty. It's because they're afraid they're going to be taken away.
Sure, that happens.
And that is a big part of cultural currency. You're right. We see it every time. We're going to see it now. And it helps fuel the speculation of, you people want to take away all our guns. You want to leave me defenseless. You want to help the bad guys.
But that's one of the problems with this discussion, because it's gotten to the point where any limitation whatsoever. We couldn't get a bill through last year to keep people who were on the no-fly list from buying weapons. That was viewed as, the first step. I don't consider this a first step. I'm from a state that's a very strong Second Amendment state. I'm a strong Second Amendment guy. We have one of the highest rates of gun ownership in the country, one of the lowest rates of gun crime. We know how to handle guns responsibly. But the bump stock, it seems to me, is a specific piece of equipment that enables a tragedy like this. Most in my experience, most people who are really into guns and how to handle them don't have much respect for the bump stock. It makes the gun less accurate, and they don't really think it's very important. Now, we'll see how the discussion unfolds and what the NRA says and what the gun ownership, but I don't see this as a slippery slope argument. This is a specific piece of equipment. If it hadn't have been for this piece of equipment, this tragedy would have been much, much less serious.
Well, we'll see if there's any discussion at all, to be frank about it, because this is going to take political courage. And I made the analogy for a reason to Kellyanne. If you want to show respect to the survivors, you do what they did. They faced something that was dangerous, lethal in this case, and they helped each other anyway.
By the way,
put themselves out there anyway.
Watching that tape that you just showed, the guy I want to give a medal to is that guy who stayed saying, keep your head down, move out, get out. He was there, and he was in effect putting his life on the line for those other people. That was really impressive to me.
And first responders who do that, they put themselves in harm's way. A lot of citizens did it. Why would you let somebody have something they can put on a device that would overwhelm his ability to defend himself against it? But again, we'll see what you guys do on that. Other topics as well this morning. We have what's going on with the Russia investigation. The president and his surrogates continue to say there's nothing there, and the proof is you've come up with nothing. How do you see it?
Well, I wish they'd quit saying that. I mean, what was clear yesterday from the press conference, and it's clear to me being on the Intelligence Committee working on this for 9 months, 8-9 months, is the Russians meddled in our elections at the order of Putin, and in the end, they were trying to help Donald Trump. There's no argument about that. And the problem is, if we're going to defend ourselves against this in the future, and by the way, they are going to be back. This isn't a one-off deal. We have to acknowledge what they did so the American people can begin to prepare themselves for it. We can understand how to prevent it. Now, the question of whether there was collusion is a second question. That's important. But the problem is the White House is so defensive about that question, they're trying to say the whole thing is a witch hunt, the whole thing is a hoax. It's not a hoax. The Facebook ads were paid for with rubles. Give me a break. I mean, if that isn't evidence of Russian involvement in trying to get involved
but they say that show where Trump became involved instead of as an unintended beneficiary who around him Who was part of this? Why haven't we
Well,
seen any proof yet?
that's a question that, remember, Watergate was a 2-hour event involving 4 people. This is an 18-month event involving a foreign country, hundreds, if not thousands of people, and it's going to take time to get to the bottom of it. And some, as Richard Burr said yesterday, some of the things that we've turned up and gotten into, we wouldn't have expected 9 months ago. The whole thing with Twitter and Facebook. That may be one of the most important parts of the investigation. We're going to have the CEOs in a few weeks, and we're going to go from there.
Now, Senator, you came this morning, you said to me before we came on, have to talk about Iran. It's not in the headlines right now. What's the issue?
It will be in 2 or 3 days because the president has to certify whether Iran is in compliance with the agreement next week by the 15th of October.
Or else?
Well, if he doesn't certify, then it throws it back to Congress. Congress has to act to put the sanctions back in place. It begins the unraveling of the agreement, which I think would be a disaster. And you don't have to rely on me. 2 days ago in the Armed Services Committee, I asked Secretary Mattis point blank, do you believe it's in the national security interest of the United States to stay in this agreement? He paused, and then he said, yes, Senator, I do. There is no upside to unraveling this agreement. Iran is doing a lot of bad things. This wasn't a friendship treaty. This was about a narrow issue of nuclear weapons. And all the bad things Iran's doing in the region are terrible. They're unacceptable. We just passed a new set of sanctions on those things. The only thing worse than a malignant Iran in the Middle East is a malignant Iran in the Middle East with nuclear weapons. And that's what this agreement's all about. So I understand the president doesn't like the deal. It's not a great deal. I didn't think it was a great deal, but it's the deal we have. And if our allies aren't with us on this, and there was a meeting up at the Capitol yesterday, they're not with us on this. There's no violations. Intelligence community has told us there are no violations. They've abided by the agreement. To try to unravel it now, I think a year from now, we'd have North Korea and Iran, almost identical. If I were the president, I'd say, I'll take one of these at a time, not both at the same time.
Senator, thank you for being with us.
Thanks,
Always
Chris.
a pleasure.
Good to see you.
From Maine.